Words of Radiance. What can be said of this book? So, very thick. First of all, 1,081 pages, I think it was. Yep. And probably the biggest book I've read ever. Way of Kings was like 1,000 something. It was also huge. Oathbringer's next, which I'll probably get from the library tomorrow and take this one back. I think it might be even bigger. I don't know. So the first book, excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold I'm getting over. The Way of Kings, I had a really rambling review. We can't really explain. There's so much in that book. There's so much world building that Brandon Sanderson does that it's hard to explain what goes on in the world. I tried to explain it to Austin the other day because he's a big lore guy. If you like lore, then this is the series for you because it's full of it. So you got these things called the Parshmen that they were fighting in the first book, and they hinted that they might be the Void Bringers of the past. And a lot of it is like you don't understand what they're talking about because you're hearing it from the characters, and it's so far back in their history that they don't know fully what all of it means. So you're learning as they learn, kind of. You're finding out about like the Knights Radiant and the Heralds. The Heralds are kind of like mini gods or demigods or something. And then you got the Storms that come across, and there's apparently a Spren in the Storm called the Stormfather, which Dalinar thought was the Almighty, thinking he was God, but he was like, no, he's just but a figment of God or a piece of God or something. And it kind of hints that there's another. Well, the God was killed by this other guy, and now they're going to have to fight this guy that killed God in the next book. So you don't know who's God or what a God is, really, but it's like the whole thing with the Everstorm coming, and like that was the Voidbringers with the Parshendi. That this book really gets into how the Parshendi work, and they didn't really explain it in the first book. I don't think there was any drawings of the Parshendi, the Parshmen or the Parshendi, whichever you want to call it. But it talks about them being able to like take their limbs off or their fingers or something. They're talking about like taking body parts off and changing. And there's different forms that they all have. Like there's a dull form, which is like a standard dude that all the slaves are, the Parshmen. And you got your war form, which is the Parshendi that have like the armored carapaces and stuff that they're usually fighting on the Shattered Plains. And then you got like one that's for mating, mate form. So I guess there's a sexy looking version. And you got like there's a few other ones. There's like workers and like different kinds of. It's kind of like bees or insects, sort of. And I always imagine them having like reverse jointed legs because they talk about them being able to jump across the chasms where the humans have to have these bridges to get across the chasms. So very interesting how you don't know what the Parshmen are. I don't think they ever drew them though. You still follow the point of view of Shallan and Kaladin and Dalinar. And then there was a cut scene, like an interlude chapter that introduces a new character called Lift, which I think is going to be prominent in the next book or two. And she's like one of these Knights Radiant that can absorb. She can get Stormlight energy from food, like eating food. She can metabolize it. And there's all kinds of weird things. Anyway, 10 out of 10. Epic book. I can't recommend it enough, but I have some gripes. The first book, Way of Kings, there was like 4 or 5 places where Brandon Sanderson put the wrong word in. It didn't have misspellings, I think, because the spell checker would have caught it. It had a few like wrong words. This book didn't have any I could find, but it does this thing. I've seen other books do this. They'll have maps. Here's the big map with all these places on it, right? A lot of the places on the map are never mentioned in the book. So why are they on the map? And then at the end, near page 1049, when you read this, Roshar, they teleported through this big portal, and I'm trying to figure out where they were on the map. And it says, judging from the sun height, scholars placed them near the center of Roshar, somewhere in the mountains near Tubala, maybe Emul. You go to the middle of the map, or anywhere on the map. There's no such place called Tubala or Emul. Oh wait, here's Emul. Fuck. Oh, okay, I found them. It was like a whole zone That was named Tubale. I thought it was like a city. They're talking about a whole area. Like a county or whatever it would be called. A country? Like Shinovar is a country, right? So Emo and Tubala are countries. Okay, so it'll be like right around in here is where they tell from over here at the Shattered Plains to over here. And there's something weird too. Is like Kaladin gets this ability to fly. Like the Windrunners can do this. Like the assassin in white. He has to fight him. And he can bind himself, like lash himself to the sky if he wants to like fly. You can apportion a certain amount of your mass. So if you do like half of your weight and you'll float, you'll be like weightless. You can half up and half down, or you kind of suspend yourself in the air. If you just bind yourself to the sky, you'll just shoot up into the air and you can kind of fly. So they go on this big journey to the center of the Shattered Plains, and it takes them like 2 weeks. And then Kaladin is just like, he just goes there instantly and flies there. Like, it took him no time. So it doesn't really make sense. Also, if you could just fly, then he could have just scouted out this place that they were going to and seen what it was all about. I guess I don't know, it really makes sense. Like, if you had the ability to fly, why didn't you just do that? Because he ends up telling Shallan that the whole Shattered Plains was symmetrical, which lets her draw this huge map of it, because he was up in the air and he saw it from above. But if he's up in the air and he saw it from above, he could just go to the middle of it, right? And also, something I realized is really stupid is that they have these soul casters, right? They can turn stuff into different things. Like they have these buildings, they'll just stack up like a log cabin, and they'll turn the logs into stone. So then they got a stone building that can weather these high storms. If you could do that, just make all your bridges permanent bridges. Like put your log bridge down, soul cast it into stone, you got a stone bridge. You don't ever have to keep these bridgemen going back and forth, picking up bridges, carrying them to the next place, putting them down, picking them up, carrying them. Just make new bridges and then make permanent bridges everywhere. Unless they're worried that the Parshmen are going to use those bridges to attack them, but it doesn't really make sense. Also, the king gets an assassination attempt on him. The guys kind of run away a little bit, and then... Well, they explained that later on. Kaladin took him to his friend's house. Lopen is a really cool character, by the way. The guy with the had a one-armed guy. He talks like a Mexican, but he's called a Herdasian or Herzadian or something like that. And he take him to his mom's house. The king is like sitting there with Lopen's mom, making him food and shit. It's pretty funny, but he talks like a Mexican. It's really weird. And then they find out some of these people that are like Knights Radiant or whatever, or these Surge Binders. There's also people that can kind of use the Stormlight, but they're not Knights Radiant. They're just like people that can use it. And a lot of the Bridge 4 guys end up being that. And Lopen turned out to be one, and he's like healing his arm that's been missing for years. So that's going to be cool. And you have this really cool scene with Adlin and Sadeas at the end, which is really... You know, sometimes you'll have a character that's like a real pain in the ass. Like the whole time the plot's progressing, he's always just like causing trouble, and they got enough fucking problems to deal with, and this guy's still causing trouble. And you just wish one of the characters would just grab him by the throat and fucking stab him in the eye. And it happens. Like, yes! Finally somebody just did it. Stabbed the fucking guy in the eye. And we get done with this bullshit. So that's pretty cool. And then, there's another thing I didn't really understand. Well, maybe I understand it. They have like your shard blades, which are... It's totally an awesome concept. This would make a really good anime. It'd be hard to do with a live-action movie or whatever, but you got these things. They're kind of like lightsabers from Star Wars, right? But they're different. They're like more badass. They're more like Diablo legendary weapons that have different forms, and some of them look like fire or ice or big crazy designs. 6 foot long blades and shit, but they can kind of adjust. You can make them like a dagger if you wanted to. They can kind of change its shape. All of them are really like bound to Spren, which are these kind of spirits of forces and energies and emotions and things in the world. And like some of them are kind of like cursed because it's like they're from dead Spren, but dead Spren can't really die. They explain it like when you break a rock, you still have the same amount of rock there. So it's like if you break a Spren, you still have the Spren there. It's not really dead. It's just kind of sort of dead. And she was saying how humans are weird because you break them and they're gone. But the Spren are like normal. They're like rocks. So they're the ones that are normal. Humans are the ones that are weird. So it's like if you become a Knight Radiant and you hold a shard blade, you hear the screams of that dead Spren, I guess, in your mind. So you can't really hold it or something. They kind of explain, but they did a little. Oh, I don't know. It's kind of weird. You could just say these words of Radiance and become a Knight Radiant, I think. If the Stormfather or whatever the Spren that wants to bind to you agrees to it. Makes it seem like you could have an infinite number of these shard blades. Like any kind of Spren that wants to bind itself to a human could make a crazy sword out of itself and bind itself to you. And then there's a point where Shallan has to open this portal using her shard blade as a key. But I thought they said that she had a special shard blade called an honor blade, which I thought was one of the ones that the heralds used that they put in the ground in the beginning of Way of Kings. And there's only like 10 of those in existence. But then Seth Villano, the Assassin of White, he says that his people have been keeping the honor blades safe. That's why he didn't believe Kaladin could become a Knight Radiant or whatever, because he said, you must have stolen one of the honor blades. It's the only way it would make sense. And the Knight Radiant are coming back even without the honor blades. And that's why he kind of freaks out at the end. You think he's dead, but then he gets revived. So that's going to be something else going on. And you've also got these people called the Ghost Bloods, which is like a secret organization that are working behind the scenes. I don't know if they were working with Taravangian or whatever, the guy that hired the Assassin White to kill all these kings around the world, or what their end goal is. But there's a whole lot of big cliffhangery shit at the end that's really good too. But yeah, it seemed like you'd have to have an honor blade to open this portal, and she used like her sword or blade that Pattern turned himself into. But then Kaladin used the one that his shard blade that Seal turned herself into, which can also turn into like a spear and a shield and all kinds of crazy shit. So I don't know, like he got Seth Samson Villano's sword. That's definitely an honor blade, right? So it seems like he had to use that to turn the thing. Turn the key. What's the difference between a shard blade and an honor blade? I can't really tell. It's kind of confusing. But I'll tell you, reading this book was 1,000 times more fun now that I read the first book and I know halfway what's going on. The first book, if you can get through the first book, then the second book is just like gravy. It's like I'm going to go right into the fucking next 1,000-something page book because it's like, you just want to read more and more of it because now that you know what's going on, it's awesome. But the first book, you don't know what's going on. It can be really fun mindfuckery. But then once you understand it a little bit, then it's amazing. It's like you just want more and more of it, which is really great. That's what you want to see. So I guess I'll read the next book, and then I'll have time the weekend of Halloween to read Nosferatu by Joe Hill, and then I'll be done with Halloween, October spooky spook readings. I still got a bunch of movies to watch, but like this happened last year. I got into Halloween too early, I think, and I got kind of burnt out like halfway through October, and I'm already getting like Christmas songs in my head and shit. So now I'm like looking forward to Christmas, and Halloween's not happening yet. Never mind Thanksgiving and camping and all kinds of fun stuff you can do in the fall. But yeah, got a book sale at the library next week. I might try to go up there and see what they got too. But that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely, if you want to check out Stormlight Archive, we can do some theorizing on chat or something. I don't know anybody that's read it though, so if anybody wants to read it, let me know.